Okay, hello and welcome to another one of our Fireside Chats with me, Katie Roberts. I'm here at NodeConf EU and I'm speaking to David Mark Clements from NearForm. Would you like to start by just giving us a little bit of an introduction to who you are and what you're about?
Sure. I've been doing consultancy with Node.js for some time. Also, like doing things like bootstrapping digital transformations, architecture, performance consultancy. I've authored some open source libraries that are getting more and more popular, like Pinot, 0x, Fast Redact, which is for which I wrote for when GDPR happened. Yeah. It was the most efficient way to redact information before, say, logging it out or sending it somewhere else. Yeah. So yeah, I mainly jump from thing to thing. Wrote a book a little while ago. It's in its third edition. It's Node Cookbook. Of course, I've been working fairly heavily over the past 2.5 years on the two OpenJS certifications that were just launched.
Okay, can you tell me a little bit about those?
Yeah, so there's two certifications. There's the OpenJS Foundation, which is fairly new. Is going to be the certifying body for. There's a certification called OpenJS Node Application Developer, and there's a certification called Node.js Services Developer.
Right. Okay.
So the reason for that is we created the content and then we realized we had 5 hours, a 5-hour exam, and it's too much, and it's an exam you take remotely in a virtual machine environment. So what we did was we removed an hour of the exam and we split it into two 2-hour exams. Yeah. And we divided it up based on real world usage of Node. So typically you see people creating RESTful services with Node, particularly in enterprise. HTTP services are one of the major use cases. So we wanted to address that as its own exam. So the Node Services Developer is purely about creating and consuming services and applying the proper, the appropriate security when you're creating those services. So we're looking for things like the potential for a DDoS attack, potentially, or making sure that you know how to guard against, say, cross-site scripting, maybe. But without going into too much detail, it's essentially to verify that as a developer, you can be productive and also safe in an enterprise scenario. That's Node Services Developer. Node Application Developer has broad coverage of Node in terms of its APIs and its use cases outside of that, because Node is very versatile and it's used for a lot of other things, like creating build tools or real-time WebSocket servers. So this is the Node Application Developer is about checking your overall proficiency. Yeah. And they actually work hand in hand because they were developed as one course originally. Yeah. So to have overarching validation of your competency, you would want both. But if you had to choose one, you can make it specific to the kind of roles that you're looking for, or to put it on the other side, the kind of roles that you're looking to hire for. Yeah. Again, large enterprise companies, for general development requirements, they would probably want to go for the Node Services Developer. But if they have more specific tasks, or maybe more focus on innovation, then they would want to go for Node Application Developer.
Right, okay. And what sort of level would you say this was aimed at?
Right, so levels are difficult to pin down in the industry currently, and that's part of what the certification is about, is helping to define what junior, intermediate, and senior is.
Yeah.
In a tech company, the certification I would consider to be intermediate.
Right.
In a company that's undergoing a digital transformation, I would consider it upper intermediate.
Yes.
But it's in the intermediate realm.
So somebody who's been doing this for a little while.
Yes, they're using Node, or they intend to use Node on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. They're not necessarily at architectural level or at specialist level, but it's basically designed for, again, just real world usage. And the problem with the terminology like intermediate is it can be seen as not the best, if that makes sense. And so what you also sometimes see in the industry is developers labeled as senior, where their skill level may actually be more intermediate in the way that I'm using it for the certification.
Yeah.
So this is why I'm saying intermediate to upper intermediate. So yeah, it would be suitable for essentially anyone looking to progress their career and to validate their skills that isn't currently in a sort of a architectural position or in a specialist position where they say, they have a particular niche in a company, like a performance engineer or something like that. So it's quite broad because we focus on the intersection of capabilities in the exam. So, and it's particularly in Node application developer, there's broad coverage of essentially the whole surface area of Node, apart from HTTP. Yeah. So that can actually be beyond intermediate, depending on your context.
Okay, so what benefits do you think that having this certification will bring to the community?
Yeah, so from the community perspective, there's two things. There's two competing ideas about certifications, and there were certifications in the past that have unfortunately created a stigma where certifications can sometimes be seen as gatekeeping. The intention here is to use the certification more as a door opener. And it's interesting, when the certification was launched, you had different people saying different things in the community, some saying, and sometimes the same people saying, on the one hand, gatekeeping, but on the other hand, door opening. Yeah. Where people would have anecdotes about how they got into programming because of a certification that they took, because it validated that they had that skill set. So, but they weren't academically trained. Yeah. And so it provides another route for programmers to enter the industry. And because of the nature of the industry, where we have essentially exponential demand, but linear output of talent from the universities, we need to do everything we can to try to continue to fill that demand. So for the industry it's good, for the community it's good, because we can have more diversity, we can have more inclusion by trying to create as level a playing field as possible.
I know there has been some discussion around the pricing. Yeah. Could you just elaborate on that a little? Yeah,
and so to speak to my last point about a level as playing field as possible in gatekeeping, if there, and I agree with the feedback on this from the community, that the price for each exam is $300 each. So in terms of affordability for companies, that's a rounding error. It's not a problem. For individuals, freelancers that of different socioeconomic status, from different regions, in some cases that's not affordable. Yeah. And so then the certification becomes a combination of not just a validation of your skills, but a validation of your resources in the first place. And that's problematic. and that's not what the intention of the certification is. But this is a situation that has occurred because, well, again, so I can't speak for the OpenJS Foundation, so this is my personal opinion, observation, but it is that pricing, sort of geo-pricing, is actually a very complex thing to get right. And if you're an organization, a foundation, a non-profit that doesn't specialize in that specific thing, then it's very difficult to do. Yes, they could outsource, but I think that's part of it. The other thing is it's the price comes from a recurring pattern where the Linux Foundation, which supports the OpenJS Foundation, has created other certifications at that price point. So it's really a propagation of other certifications. But I don't think it's appropriate for the Node.js community to have that as a static price. There's two ways that the foundation are addressing this. When the feedback came back from the community, the first thing that the foundation did, Robin Ginn, the executive director, put out a blog post saying, we actually agree with you on this. We want to hear more feedback and suggestions, and we would really love to start connecting with non-profits in the industry to see if there's a way that we can solve this. And we'll be updating in a few weeks to let you know on how we're going to be addressing this. I think that the direction it's going to go is scholarships, but what they also do is they have regular promotions. So even if you can't go the scholarship route, and there's a promotion right now where it's gone from $300 to $179 with a promo code. If you look me up on Twitter at David Mark Clem, you should be able to find it from my Twitter. But it's only this week. There will be regular future promotions to essentially pretty much half the cost. Yeah. You can do both certifications for $329 instead of $600. Yeah. So that's one way to address it, but I don't think that's enough. The other way is scholarships, and with the scholarships, I think we need to be careful that we don't I think the scholarship should be unlimited in the sense that for every non-profit that wants to work with the foundation to provide scholarships to its members, more scholarships should be given. Yeah. And I think that that's appropriate given the financial dynamics at play. The foundation is funded by the industry. The industry wants to access talent, and that talent, if those people with that talent can't validate their skills because they don't have the resources to do so, then we should make a way for that to happen because it's good for everyone. So the only thing is that the foundation needs to hear from nonprofits that want to provide scholarships to their members, nonprofits globally. So wherever you are or whatever socioeconomic status or minority or any kind of group that would benefit from this, we would love to hear from. You could either contact me again through Twitter, or contact the foundation, or contact the executive director of the foundation, Robin Ginn. Again, in the blog post that they released, Robin put her own personal email to be contacted at for any matters related to this, because it is, I think, a very important issue on their radar right now, and they do want to address it as soon as possible because they see that the value of the OpenJS Foundation is totally connected to this entire thing.
So I'm going to just ask you about, I know this has been very all-encompassing in your life for the last few
2.5
years.
2.5 years, yeah.
But you have been doing other things as well.
Yeah.
Do you want to have a little mention of what you've been up to other than all of this?
Well, there's the book. I mean, I wrote the book at the same, Node Cookbook is in its 3rd edition, and I actually was, when the first iteration of the content for the exam, I was actually writing Node Cookbook 3rd edition as well. So there's a pro tip there. If you because there's certain, you want to get into the mind of the person that created the exam, and if you can read stuff that they've written, that will help just in terms of general mentality. But it is also on the recommended reading list with specific chapters for each of the exams that you can read in the book. There's also, I co-wrote that book with Matteo Collina. He wrote a chapter with me. Matthias Booz also wrote a chapter with me, and Peter Elger wrote 2 chapters in that book too. So it was actually a little bit more collaborative. So that was the 3rd edition of Node Cookbook. It's like this thick compared to the 1st edition when I wrote it like maybe 7 years ago when it was about this thick. So it definitely represents how Node has grown over the years and how the usage of it has increased a lot. And I think that speaks to the timing of the certification now. I think is a nice marker point as to where we are in where we're maturing, and I think that's a good thing. So, other stuff, just like open source stuff and consulting and all that kind of stuff. And I like to do lots of different things that keeps me. It stops me from getting bored.
Keeps you out of trouble.
Yeah, keeps me out of trouble. Only just though.
And finally, just to go over it again, if anybody wants to get in touch about potentially helping out with sponsorship, who would you suggest they contact?
I would say the best person is to contact Robin Ginn. But if you want any extra background or anything, then hit me up on Twitter, and I'll connect the dots for you.
That's great. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you.